Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Full On Football podcast. As always, I'm joined by Ben, but more importantly, this week we're delighted to be joined by Michael Bailey from the Athletic and On the Ball podcast. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I know Ben's been desperate to get you on for a while. And we were talking off air the other day with the football season, a 10-month football season being condensed into sort of 8.5 months last year, the the Euros, the most hectic transfer transfer window I can ever remember. Do you get any time off at all? Or is it just 12 months, 52 weeks,
Well, first of all, thanks for asking me on, boys. Absolute pleasure. Yes, we do. Like any employee, we have to have some days off. So we get a few weeks. The tricky bit is always when to take it. I'd been spoiled, I think, in recent years by Norwich not doing any late business. So I remember this year I actually took the Sunday and Monday before deadline day off, thinking, it'll be all right, be quiet, and then I'll just pop in on deadline day to see how it's going. But those 2 days, Norwich probably picked up their two most crucial signings of the window. So they went out of the window. And long story short, my wife is a primary school teacher, so we're kind of balancing between when pre-season starts and when the school year ends, and trying to squeeze in a bit of time then. But it's not always easy getting the holiday in. I think we all do this job because we love going to football games, we love talking about football, we love chatting to people about it and writing stories about it. So even when you do have a week off, if you're stuck at home, it can be really hard to switch off because you probably want to watch the football and follow the football anyway. And I'm not saying that's, it's a labor of love, isn't it? Because I enjoy it anyway. So there's no, I'm not trying to cry here for sympathy or anything. It's just the way it is. You just try and balance it off, really. The thing that gets me is, the last few years, Norwich have been able to go to away games and they fly there and they fly back. And if they fly early, they get a nice hotel room and everything. And, generally I might have to spend 4, 5, 6 hours in a car and a train either way to do the same job and then carry on doing my job during the rest of the week as well. So you're doing a lot of travel. You're leaving very late at games. So it's an intense job, but I love it.
Yeah, you wouldn't change it for the world, I'm sure.
Nope.
No, that's it. Speaking of things that aren't difficult, Norwich's start to the season hasn't been easy. Probably the most difficult start to the season I've ever seen. I remember a couple of years ago, Arsene Wenger claiming that it's good to get all the difficult games out of the way early. I'm not sure I buy that in Norwich's situation. Was it 10-game losing streak coming into the season, which can't have been easy.
Yeah.
Is it been? Results obviously haven't been great. If the performance has been better than that suggests?
To be honest, I'm finding it really hard to judge it because I can see why a lot of Norwich fans are worried that they're just going to experience the same season they did 2 years ago, but maybe without the high points at the start of it. But also there are elements where they do look stronger. And they do look like they have got a bit more about them. And there does feel like there's this weight this time on Daniel Farke as the head coach to make better use of what he's got, rather than 2 years ago. And I think it was just generally accepted that the players weren't good enough and you couldn't really blame the head coach because what else was he supposed to do? So there is a really interesting difference in the dynamic this time. I think the sooner Norwich can pick up some points, the better, because I think they are suffering a bit from the hangover of those 10 games in the Premier League last time. I think everyone's got a bit of a crisis of confidence and belief. And that's probably, I'm talking more about the supporters there because they were the ones who were watching it all 2 years ago. Some of the players obviously weren't here. Others came in and won the championship in the meantime. So it's a bit different for them. But I think the one element for me is that it is a terribly hard start, and I think what it's done is created this game on Saturday at home to Watford where everyone's like, well, we've got to win, and already we're into sort of 6-pointer territory. But Norwich had such a difficult, broken pre-season. They lost 2 of their friendlies. Then the final 2 they only had about 13, 14, 15 fit players because in the middle they had a COVID outbreak. They've had a really difficult pre-season. It was just very hard for them to get everything together. So in a way, if you're then playing games that maybe you were expected to lose at the start to try and get back up to speed, there's a degree of mitigation, and it probably does you a favour, because if you're playing Watford at home and Palace away, for example, in your first two games where people are like, you could do with 4 points there, and then you're not ready because of your pre-season, then it does put a huge amount of pressure on. So I guess like training for a time trial, they sort of geared up high because they've played difficult teams. They've been outclassed by Manchester City completely. They were absolutely nowhere near them. I thought Liverpool, first hour or so they were in it, and then kind of just lost their way. I think Leicester was a slightly missed opportunity because I thought they got them at a slightly low ebb. But that said, Leicester bounced back and nearly took something off Manchester City. So maybe my perception of that game initially is I was being maybe slightly too harsh on Norwich, and they were incredibly unlucky with the VAR goal that got disallowed. And Arsenal, I mean, I've seen a lot about Arsenal's 30 shots on target, which is probably more than you'd want to concede, but I don't know, a lot of them weren't very good. And actually Norwich kind of defended generally pretty well. And, let's be honest here, Arsenal are not going to be relegated. It will be fascinating how they do going forwards. Absolutely. But now they're all done and out of the way. It's just up to people to prove what they've got about them now. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that, to be honest, on Saturday.
The striking thing for me as an outsider looking in, and by all means, I'm not an expert on Norwich, so hoping to leverage your expertise here, but looking at the squad, this seems like as strong a squad as I can remember Norwich having. And you mentioned it a minute ago about the players that you've actually got at your disposal. I'm looking at players like Timu Pukki, Todd Cantwell, Ozan Kabak, Billy Gilmore, Brandon Williams, all these players coming in, and I'm thinking you've actually got a really good core of players there. What does a successful season look like for Norwich this year? Is it a case of, it's a bit lazy. Is it just a case of staying up, or is there more? What?
You say lazy. I mean, it feels like the outside perception for Norwich is that Norwich's goal for this season is to pick up the check, because most people assume they can't be bothered to stay up. That's sort of this weird sort of a view of it all. And I think there is a bit more nuance to it than that. What I would say is this time, I think 17th is success, 18th is probably failure this season. And that is different to 2 years ago, where I felt, and everyone kind of felt, that they weren't at it. The pandemic had a massive effect, I think, on that run in. And it all got away from them really in the end. But there was sort of this view that they were growing for a longer term. But this time, the growing for a longer term kind of relies on them staying up. I feel like they'd have to do a lot more work if they got relegated this time. It's a harder thing to say, oh, well, no, third time we'll get it right. I mean, I hate this idea that, well, you'll just go get relegated and win the championship again, won't you? Because the championship is brutal. It's horrible. I've seen Norwich be absolute rubbish in the championship loads of times. And after being relegated from the Premier League as well, by the way. So I know how hard that division is. So I think ultimately, in this season for me, it is that straightforward. I don't think they need to bother aiming any higher than 17th. Obviously, we take it in a heartbeat, but I think essentially that is the cutoff line. It's really interesting though, Ben, because with the squad, I think on paper, the work that they've done in the transfer window, they've spent a lot of money for them. They also sold Emi Buendia, so they're having to deal with the loss of their best player last season. But there are a lot of options available to Daniel Farke of a pretty good quality. I just want to see how that manifests on the pitch. I hate judging a transfer window by the spreadsheet at the end. It kind of needs to be how these players settle in. I have a question mark over Billy Gilmore and what player he is going to be for Norwich City. I know there's a lot of hype. I know he plays for Scotland, and Scotland fans seem to be like, oh my God, we've got a midfielder who can pass the ball, as if they've never had one before. And I don't, and Billy Gilmore did really good when he played for Chelsea in a really good side. But I think there's a lot for him to prove in a kind of a Norwich environment. And that's only one of them. There's a lot of players there who, Milot Rashica didn't have a great season last season, but Hertha Berlin, but not Hertha Berlin, Werder Bremen. But, he's got a chance to prove himself this season. And I think he could be a really exciting signing. But so far, he looks a little bit short of the physical level that he needs to be, which may be from pre-season. So, I'm wanting to see much more from him because at the moment, he's not really doing enough for what I would expect of him. So I think there's a lot of, and again, it filters into who Norwich have played so far and who they've got coming up. So there's quite a lot to be resolved. But I think this time the squad won't be an excuse for Daniel Farke. I think this time he does have to get much more out of them and make Norwich competitive with at least the bottom 6 sides in the top flight.
With Norwich's last stint in the Premier League, it fits and starts. Todd Cantwell seemed to be growing into a player that people were sort of standing up to, sort of take a step back and think, who's this guy? And obviously had a great season last year in the Championship. Who, if you were to ask Timo Pukki who he would rather have kept, Buendia or Todd Cantwell, who was really the catalyst behind it? Because obviously Cantwell gets a lot of the plaudits, but it seemed to be that Buendia was the main man, especially in linking up with Pukki last season.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would hate to speak for Timo Pukki, first of all. What I will say is that we spoke to a lot of the players a lot of the time last season, which was an amazing season to watch. I felt very privileged given the fans couldn't actually go and watch it. And for me, Timo would praise the other players, someone like Todd, for what they were doing. But with Emmy, it was a special relationship, really. But both of them said they were their favourite player to have and partner to have played with, which I guess maybe they would have said because we were generally asking that after an assist or a goal. But it did look like that. I think it got to the point where keeping Emmy wasn't going to work because he wanted to move on. He wanted to play at a bigger club, which he's done in Aston Villa for a lot of money. And they were, basically using him as part of the replacement for Jack Grealish. So I think that says a lot about what Emmy did last year and how high Villa rated him. And Todd did do well last year. I felt like that was an interesting dynamic between him and Emmy. And I was hoping that this year it would be a real chance for Todd to sort of fill the space that was left and really sort of step up. I think he's trying. We've not quite seen enough of that yet. And I want to see more. At the moment, I'm seeing Conor Gallagher doing things that I wish Todd Cantwell was doing, to be honest. So maybe that's just because I've got the same hair. But so Todd's an interesting one going forwards because I think he really does need to knock on the door quite hard. But I mean, I don't think it was feasible that Norwich could have kept Emi Buendia, but I loved watching him in a Norwich shirt, and I would have signed him down to a 15-year contract if it had been doable, because I think he was magic. And I actually think in the Premier League, off the back of his first season of learning, and then the way he stepped up, I think we'd have seen even more of him for Norwich in the Premier League. I think it's interesting that Emi's got a goal before he's got an assist for Villa, which is interesting in itself. And I think Teemu is having to probably deal with the fact that he has lost his best supply line, and I think that's been one of Norwich's issues in the first 4 games.
It's interesting you say about Buendia there, and actually what stuck out to me there was the part you mentioned about him replacing Grealish at Aston Villa, because going back to when Norwich,
in part.
Yeah, obviously big boots to fill. I get that. One of the best players in the league, Jack Grealish. But going back a couple of seasons ago when Norwich were last in the Premier League, a lot was being made of Todd Cantwell, stylistically being very similar to Jack Grealish. You probably see those comparisons, just in terms of style and how good could he actually be, Todd Cantwell, do you think? Do you think he could be that good?
That's a great question. Potentially, I think he's sort of fluctuating at the minute between his reputation and what he's delivering. I think he's so lovely to watch move with the ball, and he can play in really tight spaces. And I think we saw last season the development in his goal scoring. Although he had a very good start to his Premier League season, I think, which kind of set that reputation, I thought from then on he struggled a little bit. Showed real willing in the Project Restart time. I thought he started taking real responsibility, but then we had a difficult summer over whether the speculation, and we've got an interesting situation with Todd now that he is still here in this window, or he's still stayed at Norwich the other side of the window. He's now into the last 2 years of his contract, really effectively, because Norwich have got a 1-year option and it expires next summer. So even Norwich and Todd have got a decision to make over what his future looks like now, and whether, he signs a new deal or Norwich have to contemplate cashing in. But then does that require him to step up? Because is anyone going to bid for him off the first 4 games so far? Probably not. So I think Todd's got plenty there. I don't know about, matching what Jack Grealish has done, although I still think it'll be interesting how his season pans out at Manchester City, I think. But I think Todd can definitely be a regular Premier League player if he can find a level of consistency and start scoring and assisting. And I think he's got a lot of the hallmarks to do that. But I think he's got to prove it. I don't think he's done that yet. And I think it would be wrong if anyone assumed that he was already a Premier League player. Because for me, I think he's still got a few bits and pieces to iron out.
I guess the saving grace for Todd is that very similar trajectory to Jack Grealish in the sense that it wasn't quite where, he showed glimpses in the Premier League and obviously spent a period in the Championship. So it's never, people are quick to write players off or label them as this, that and the other. And there's definitely still the scope for him to become the player that he will be. Obviously, people like to draw comparisons, but I'm sure he'll find his own way in his own way of playing. Just a quick one, Michael, with obviously Norwich been up and down the last few years. It feels like for about 10 years they've yo-yoed, going back to sort of Grant Holt and Ricky Van Wolfswinkel of, what was that, 2011, 2012? The player.
Good knowledge.
Yeah. Is it, you'll know this better than me. Didn't he score on the opening day and then never scored again? Was that right?
Wasn't quite, well.
He didn't score.
Yeah, you're pretty much there.
Goal, or basically, he didn't score for like 20 odd games after that.
You're pretty much there. I think it was 2013 that he signed in the March for the following summer. He scored a wonderful header on his debut 2-2 draw against Everton. He then Norwich played away at Hull, and he had another wonderful header that Alan McGregor tipped over. It's an incredible save. It was a bullet header, brilliant header, on target, tipped over, and that game finished. I think Norwich might have lost actually 1-0 to a penalty, or it was a goalless draw. I can't remember, but so that would have been 2 from 2, but it was a great save. And then I think the third game was at home to Aston Villa when Norwich won a penalty. Ricky was going to take it, and Robert Snodgrass took it off him basically and said, "No, I'm going to take it," even though it was. I think it was Ricky's duty to take the penalty, and the penalty was then saved. And then I think he injured his toe, or he had a broken toe that he'd been trying to play with. It didn't work out, so he sort of went to go and get that fixed. By the time he came back, I think Chris Hughton was seeing that Norwich were in trouble and was basically saying, "Look, we're not going to really play this open, expansive game I thought we were going to do with you, so we're going to change it." And then after that, that was it really. I think that Norwich weren't playing to Ricky's strengths, never looked like they would. Ricky had a massive crisis of confidence. I could tell from the way he was playing, because he was playing passes to people who were only on the pitch in his head, because they weren't really where he was seeing him. And then I think he scored one more goal at Rotherham in the League Cup a couple of years ago, but basically spent the next 2 years of his contract out on loan at top flight clubs. So Saint Etienne in Liga, and I think it was Betis in La Liga. So, I mean, whether it was him not wanting to play in the Championship or Norwich going, and we need to get some of your wages off the books, I don't know. But it's a sorry tale, really, because I went to Lisbon to watch him in those few months between his signing being confirmed and him actually coming to Norwich, and he was great to watch. He scored some wonderful goals, and it was really interesting to see him play. But it did strike me even then that people were saying, well, it's going to take time to adapt. And also, Norwich were not going to play the football that would have ever got the best out of Ricky. So I think all in all, it probably went the way it was going to, because Norwich didn't get it right.
He's still playing?
He's still playing. I think he's in Holland now, the Netherlands. He might be back at Arnhem, or is he at Twente? I think he's been around the houses a little bit. He went back to Vitesse. Obviously had a brain aneurysm that kept him out of the game for 6 months. But he played in Basel as well. So he's had a good career. I mean, whether it's hit the heights he would have hoped for, I don't know. But he's played regularly in top flights across Europe. So and scored goals at each level. So fair play to him, I say.
Maybe I was being a bit harsh. Maybe there were mitigating circumstances, like you said, as to why he didn't set the league alight. Like,
don't you worry. I know tens of thousands of Norwich fans who would be much harsher than you have been. So don't worry.
So you did mention in there that he was a really good player. Oh, I always thought Robert Snodgrass. I remember watching him Leeds in the League One Championship. Obviously went to Norwich, Hull, West Ham. Always thought he was a good player. When sides used to sell him, I was always baffled. Always thought he was a good player. But there you go. In terms of Harry's saying about like Norwich being a yo-yo club, I wonder how that like makes Norwich fans feel, because something I always think is, what is Norwich's ambition? Like where do you see the club going? Is it good enough just to be going up and down every year? Like that, and that must hurt. But then at the same time, there is an element of excitement to that, as opposed to just finishing 10th every season. Obviously, like you ride the highs and lows and the emotions. There's pros and cons to both. I get that. But what is the club's ambition? What's the long-term goal?
We had a piece on The Athletic, actually, I think it was last year, with I think it was Norwich, Palace, Fulham, maybe, Burnley, talking about, would the fans rather go up and down, or would they rather be fighting for promotion and playing good football, or being really, rank, but, trying to survive in the Premier League? And I think what it ultimately came down to is whatever a team's identity was, as long as the fans were on board with it, they were okay. I think the hardest bit was sort of not quite knowing what it was. I think there's no doubt that Norwich going up and down and down and down and up and up and down and up and whatever in the last sort of 15 years has made for a remarkable time to follow the club. We've had everything basically. Even me reporting on them, I've had to go from 5 wins over the course of a season to 5 defeats, basically. It's a mental change in dynamic. So I think that makes life much more exciting than being stuck in the Championship for however long, which, by the way, I have also experienced as an Norwich fan. So I know what that feels like too. And you do get that bit where you go up for the first time and it's a real novelty. And I think Brentford will be experiencing that this season, most definitely. Norwich's ambition is a really interesting one, because I think, again, 2 years ago, I think it was quite straightforward that it didn't really matter what happened in the Premier League because there was a bigger picture. This time, I do feel like that it will be harder to digest the relegation. I think that if they get relegated, the Championship will be harder. We've got an elephant in the room in terms of Stuart Webber, who's the sporting director. He's done a very good job at the club. His contract is set to expire in June. So does he stay if Norwich get relegated? They've also lost their head of recruitment, who was looking after that for both of their Championship title-winning seasons, effectively. So he can claim a lot of credit for that. So it will be a different outfit, really, that Norwich will be taking on in terms of the Championship. They've also, because they've done so much business this time, and they've bought, 3 or 4 players for £9 million. I'm not convinced all those players are going to be as keen to go and play in the Championship next year. Milot Rashica and Josh Sargent both left Werder because they got relegated. So that dynamic is really interesting. And putting it on then the fans, I think I can tell that they are a bit angsty about the whole idea of Norwich just not being bothered to stay up, and the yo-yoing and not being competitive. I think it touches on a nerve. And I think that's just because, to be honest, for 14 games, they haven't been competitive. They haven't picked up a point. They've been off it in a lot of those games, however hard it's been at this level. So how that evolves this year, Ben, will be really interesting, because I think we could have Norwich fans who are a bit unhappy if it's not going very well, and they'll also be in the stadium to vocalise that. Alternatively, there are still some positive signs, and you could say that the squad is stronger, so therefore they should be competing, and 5 or 6 more games time, Norwich will be 4th, 5th from bottom in amongst Burnley and Southampton, and it'll be like, oh, okay, here we go, let's see what we get now when we get towards Christmas. So I think the club and the supporters know what the model is. I think there will be supporters who, if it unravels and it doesn't work this season, they will be unhappy because they will feel that the club has got a ceiling with the model that it's got. They will feel that they can't compete in the Premier League. So what's the point in getting promoted? I think that will be quite a difficult feeling to process. By the same token, a lot of fans prefer it in the Championship because they get to see a lot more goals and wins generally. So I suppose that's easier when it's going well and harder when it's not. But ultimately, I don't know if there's a long way around an answer, but I think we'll have to kind of wait and see what the Norwich looks like at the end of this season, I think, in terms of what the future ambitions are. Because I think the ambition to this point has been to get to here and to become an established Premier League club, which I think really, I hate that term, for me just means staying up. So if they do that, then it kind of ticks on. If it doesn't, I think there will need to be a bit of soul searching this time around. I think about what happens afterwards.
I do think it's like what you said. I think the stability aspect is very much like front and centre in Norwich's project. Be careful. It's like, without being a pessimist, be careful what you wish for. You can be a Fulham who broke the bank and then suffered sort of a hangover for that for a number of seasons. A QPR who completely broke the bank and are probably still suffering to this day, more or less, almost a decade on. Or a side like Huddersfield who went up, didn't spend a penny, and now, or Stoke that dropped down and now are stuck in that league. So getting relegated, for Norwich to be a labelled yo-yo club, that's breaking the mould of what normally happens, which is what teams either sink like a rock or get into the Championship. And because, like you said, how competitive and ferocious it is, they just can't, for the life of them, seem to get out of it. And you end up with sides like Sheffield Wednesday, who have been languishing at that level. Leeds, until very recently, were languishing in the Championship without really threatening to leave it. So it is, I think, it's very much a case of careful what you wish for. Obviously, you want ambition and this, that, and the other, but it's such a fine balance to strike, isn't it?
100%. And in fairness, I think Huddersfield did overreach in that second season. I think they tried to kick on and they overstretched themselves. It didn't work out, and then it unravelled. And again, if you don't get that spending right on that in that window after you've been relegated, it becomes really difficult. I really don't like the idea that parachute payments are a magic bullet and make the Championship uncompetitive. I don't believe that. I've been on both sides of it. The Norwich went up in 2018-19. 3 seasons after they got relegated. It was their first season without any parachute payments. It's so hard for teams to bounce straight back. It would be the exact opposite if it was for the parachute payments. That money, most clubs have already spent the money by the time they're relegated. In truth, so I think it's just because of that huge chasm between the two divisions. You can already see how hard it is to compete in the Premier League with just the money you're given. Essentially, Watford and whoever, even Brentford to a degree, they're spending money that they're getting from their owners. Whereas Norwich have had to kind of sell one of their best players to help fill some of the gaps. So the one thing Norwich haven't done is overreach, as far as I'm aware. And so we'll see if there are any secrets in the cupboard if it all unravels. But Norwich have tried to manage it really well. So at least they will still probably end up with a better training ground if they are relegated, and arguably a more valuable squad, even if they're relegated, and other plans they'll want to develop in terms of the club. So they've got that absolutely right. And I think that is an important part of Norwich's identity for sure. But again, it comes down to the fact Daniel Farke and Sean Dyche are the only 2 managers in the last 20, certainly 10 years to have basically got a team back to the Premier League, having been relegated, and doing that as the same manager at a club. Most clubs would change managers. So that continuity for Norwich is very important, and Daniel Farke's new contract is very important until the point where the supporters feel like he's not getting the most out of the players. And at that point, you would sense that inside the ground. And again, Norwich kind of probably were done a bit of a favour by not having supporters at Carrow Road during Project Restart when it was really unravelling, and then early on in the Championship, because it just allowed the players to get on with it pretty much, and especially in the Championship, which they then did.
Michael, just a couple of quick fire questions for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
How are you feeling? Bit nervous about it?
A bit nervous now, yeah.
Yeah?
I'll answer quickly.
All good. Right, so start off this season. Who have you got on the back of your shirt? Which player have you got on the back of your shirt?
Probably Matthias Norman, because Norwich are in desperate need of a holding midfielder who can do the job properly. And I haven't even seen him play for Norwich yet. He hasn't even played for them yet. So I'd be there. I'd get my discount. I'd have my new shirt, and I'd be hoping he'd be the saviour.
Go on, Har. You got one.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going. Yeah. Michael, big one for me. I was listening to your On the Ball pod this morning. Mal, one of your people on your show, said that her pet hate is the player taking the corner, not beating the first man. And that's something I've always maintained on here, and it drives me up the wall. And I've always had a theory that you should be booked. If you don't beat the first man from a corner, the referee should walk up and brandish a yellow card, make an example of you, do that again, and you're off, sort of thing. Because it's inconceivable to me that a professional footballer can't beat the first man from a corner. And that's something I would change. What if you could change one rule, hypothetical or serious, in football, what would it be?
I love that. I mean, Norwich would end up with a lot, probably sent off players for two corners failing and two bookings. So bugbears. I mean, I would love proper functioning financial caps so that there could be a degree of competition rather than the ridiculousness that we tend to have in the Premier League, especially at the moment. But I think the thing that really gets me is the advantage rule. I cannot get my head around it. Basically, the referee says, I'll play on. And then you lose the ball. And it's like, well, you've had your advantage and you didn't do anything with it. So there you go. And that's not an advantage. That's just carrying on until something else happens. So I cannot understand how they can't go, okay, that was 10 seconds. Let's bring it back. It's all they have to do. And it doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work. Like rugby, just watch rugby. They do advantage. It doesn't have to be that long. Make it 5 seconds or whatever. But don't let someone scythe someone down and then go, oh, well, you've lost the ball now. So we're just going to carry on. And, you know, sometimes the referees get it right, but it's just such an inconsistent mess. So I don't understand why there's not a proper rule for it.
Spot on. I see players all the time taking on a ridiculous half volley, 2 players charging them down, blasting it over the bar. And well, you would have had a free kick if you didn't take the shot. And I think, I don't understand that. I really don't.
Yeah.
Honestly, it would stop players going down as well, because I think you've basically got a decision. Do I get to take this shot from 20 yards or do I go down and get a free kick? Whereas it should be, no, you can go and take that free kick, but it was still that shot, but it was still a foul. So then we can bring it back. So I think it'd work both ways, but what do I know?
Yeah, absolutely right. Because I always feel that watching United, Bruno Fernandes gets fouled, it falls to Fred and he has a shot. That's not an advantage. That's an advantage for the other team who just committed a foul. That is not that. There should be no situation where Fred ends up with the ball and the other team does not get penalised from it. I'm well on board with that. I'm well on board with that.
So just last couple from me. Score prediction Saturday. Watford.
Oh, Norwich are going to win 2-1.
Love it. Love it. Positivity. Love to hear that. Best player that you've seen play live?
Well, it would have been Ronaldinho, but he got sent off after 9 minutes when I went to watch Barcelona play, which was the most ridiculous thing. But Lionel Messi was an absolute joy in that game still, and that was special to watch him play. And that was like 2005. So probably him. We'll see if we get to see Ronaldo play at Carrow this season. That will be fun.
That will be. Messi, I watched the 4-0 Liverpool at Anfield. Unbelievable. What a night to watch him, eh?
Obviously, I'm not allowed to mention Luis Suarez because of all the goals he scored. But to be honest,
John Ruddy wouldn't be happy.
No, he wouldn't be happy.
Wouldn't be happy, yeah. And
he was quite good though, Luis. Yeah.
Oh, he was brilliant, wasn't he? Fantastic. And he used to always score against Norwich, didn't he? He must have scored about 2 a game against them.
Yeah, all right.
Three hat-tricks.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I saw them all.
That one from the halfway line always sticks out in my head.
Yeah,
that was incredible. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I should have said. To be honest, I should have said Wes Hoolahan. So I feel bad now.
You should have done. That was the political answer. And a final one from me: your favourite ever Norwich City player.
That probably is Wes Hoolahan, because he was just a joy for 10 years of the way he did things. He was kind of unique, and Norwich haven't had a player like that before or after, and it's fun watching him play for Cambridge, who got promoted from League Two for the first time in ages because they had him as a 39-year-old or whatever. So I think there was something special watching Wes play for Norwich, something unique. So probably him, but shout outs for Darren Eadie and Craig Bellamy and Brian Gunn in goal. There you go. That was as far as I got on my 11.
Yeah, we were going to do an all-time 11, but that was, it's a tough one. You'd need all night to plan it out. No, you'd
I
need all night
bailed on
to.
that.
I get it, honestly. I'd need pen and paper, a couple of hours to think about it. But I can't believe Grant Holt didn't get a mention. I've got loyalties to that man. Championship manager back in the day, Shrewsbury Town, Joe Hart in goal, Grant Holt up top. I won the lot, I'm telling you. What
Of course
a
you did.
side.
Of course you did. And what a man, by the way.
Yeah.
I love. Yeah, I have missed Grant. That's a shame. Who scored a header at Anfield for in a draw at Liverpool for Norwich, which was, I'd take one of those now.
100%. Well, best of luck on the weekend, mate. And thanks very much for joining us. I've really enjoyed your company. You've been excellent, great value. So thanks very much for coming along. And Harry's happy. That's rare to see Harry smile. So you've really achieved something tonight, Michael.
Oh, boys. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I hope we get to do it again one way or another. Hope you both enjoy your seasons.
Take care. Cheers, bud. If you enjoy listening to the Full On Football podcast, as a small show, we ask that you do us the biggest favour. Share the show with your friends, subscribe to the show, check out the show links below, follow us on social media, tell your friends about it. Just tell your friends about it in conversation. Honestly, it goes a long way. And we will keep producing the content for you guys, and hopefully you enjoy it. Make sure you leave a rating below and let us know what you think. Be sure to get in touch. Take care.